Chloe is an escort who's well versed in the art of wrapping men around her fingers. In her line of work, Chloe believes that knowing what words to say and when to say them is just as important as being able to do the job itself. For her, understanding what a man wants is part of her job. From her office window, gynecologist Catherine Stewart watches as a man takes a younger, beautiful, blonde woman inside a cab. Her receptionist calls her, informing her that her last appointment is ready. In a college, Catherine's husband, David, works as a professor. While in class, one of his students asks if she can take him to dinner. David politely refuses, saying that he needs to catch a flight home since it's his birthday. At the Stewart residence, Catherine is throwing a party for David, and she entertains the guests while they wait for the celebrant. Their son, Michael, comes home with a girl. He heads upstairs to his room, ignoring Catherine's invitation for him to join them. While Catherine's talking to one of her colleagues, her phone rings. David informs her that he'll be late since he missed his flight by a few minutes. Disappointed, Catherine asks him what time he'll be home, and as David's telling her that his next flight home is in 2 hours, the girl from his class approaches him. He apologizes to her, but Catherine hides her frustration in favor of telling David that they'll wait for him. After the party, Catherine sees that the girl Michael brought home is still there, and when she tries telling her son that the girl needs to leave, Michael slams the door on her face. Defeated, Catherine just lets him be. The following morning, Catherine wakes up to the sound of a razor and sees David shaving in the bathroom. David apologizes again, and when Catherine says she should have told him about the party, David agrees. Catherine then tells David that his presents are in her office, but he informs her that he'll be late again for dinner due to a school meeting, then leaves. Later on, Michael's guest walks around the house in her underwear, all for Catherine to see. When Michael comes out of his room, Catherine tries telling her son that what they're doing is not okay. Michael, however, claims that his dad knows that the girl was staying in their house for the night. This takes Catherine by surprise, and she asks him why nobody's told her about the girl, and he corrects her, saying that her name is Anna. When asked if they're using protection, Anna replies, assuring Catherine that they do. Before turning away, Catherine reminds them that this is not going to happen every night. While at home, Catherine hears David's phone chime. When she turns it on, Catherine sees a message from a girl named Miranda, thanking him for the previous night with their picture together attached. Later that night, Catherine and David meet Catherine's colleague, Frank, at a restaurant. A waitress then comes to take their order, and David asks her what she can recommend for drinks. As the waitress tells them to get the Maibach Vineyard, Catherine suddenly feels uncomfortable. She asks Frank where the bathroom is, then excuses herself from the table. In the bathroom, Catherine lets her hair down before getting in one of the stalls. While Catherine does her business, she hears a woman crying. She asks the woman if she's sure that there's no toilet paper in her stall. Catherine gives her some. Outside the stalls, the woman, Chloe, thanks Catherine. She takes out a hairpin and tells Catherine that she dropped it, but Catherine says it's not hers. Chloe insists on giving it to Catherine, saying she wants her to have it, but Catherine refuses and tells Chloe that she needs to get back to her husband. Catherine returns to their table, and while she's looking around, she sees Chloe with her date. On their drive home, Catherine asks her husband if he finds the waitress sexy, but David teases her, saying that he's just being friendly. Catherine then asks David if he intentionally missed his flight, but David replies that it doesn't matter whether he missed it intentionally or by mistake. Finally, she asks him if he went out for a drink, and David lies, saying that he didn't. One day, Catherine sees Chloe go to a high-class bar from her office window. In the evening, Catherine goes to that same bar to wait for the woman. When she's about to get a drink, Chloe sits beside Catherine and asks her to buy her a drink. Catherine asks what she wants, and Chloe tells her that she'll have whatever Catherine is having. Chloe tells Catherine that she doesn't usually meet with women, and Catherine straightforwardly tells her that David would like her. Teasing her, Chloe asks if Catherine chooses her husband's woman for him, to which she says no. After getting Chloe's name, Catherine gets down to business and admits that she thinks David is cheating on her and that she wants to find out if he is. This is where Chloe comes in. She instructs her to present herself to David and see what he'll do. Catherine describes David when Chloe asked what he looks like, then adds that he usually has lunch and reads his newspaper at Café Diplomatico. To craft a more solid backstory, Catherine directs Chloe to tell David that she's a student studying to be an interpreter. Equipped with enough information about David, Chloe sets things in motion by approaching him at the cafe, asking him if she could borrow his sugar. After her encounter with David, Chloe meets Catherine next and describes to her how things went. She says she saw David at the cafe reading his newspaper and that he pretended to read as she borrowed his sugar. He then approached her to ask if she was a student, and she replied that she was studying Japanese. According to Chloe, David asked her to say something in Japanese, which made her blush. Finally, David asked for her name, then Chloe assures Catherine that nothing happened. Still, Catherine is upset that David approached her. In an attempt to make her feel better, Chloe reports that David barely flirted with her and that he was just being friendly. When Catherine just silently stares at her, Chloe admits that David is cute. Catherine scoffs, then she asks Chloe how she does it. Shrugging, Chloe explains that she tries to find something to love in all her clients, even if it's just a small thing. With that, Catherine takes out an envelope and gives it to Chloe, saying that the money is inside and she wants to do this one more time. However, Catherine makes it clear that the next time they do it will be the last. At home, Catherine finds David on his computer, laughing and chatting with someone. She goes upstairs to Michael's bedroom, where she hears him talking to Anna. Catherine peeks through his door, but Anna sees her, and Michael slams his door shut. Catherine then speaks with David to ask who he's chatting with, and David tells her it's one of his students and that they're already done. Abruptly changing the subject, Catherine informs David that Michael is being dumped, but David assures her that their son is going to be okay, adding that he's in therapy. In a moment of frustration, Catherine says that she doesn't know how to be Michael's mother anymore. Then, she questions David about Anna sleeping over, and a guilty-looking David only tells her that surely, she must remember what doing that was like. He asks Catherine to drink with him, then thanks her for the party. Suddenly, David feels a bit melancholic, and he asks his wife when they stopped picking up each other from the airport and waiting for each other at the gate. Catherine says she doesn't know. David tells her that he's trying to recall when it happened, and Catherine laments about how busy they both got. She tries to kiss him, but David turns away to take a swig of his drink instead. He claims to have forgotten that he still has papers to attend to, and his wife, pretending to be okay, encourages him to get to work before leaving him. One morning, Chloe texts Catherine and asks to meet her at Rivoli. There, Catherine apologizes to Chloe, saying that she was just feeling a little insecure lately and that they should just forget what happened. However, Chloe tells her that it's too late since she's already seen David. When Catherine asks her where she saw him, Chloe replies that she was at the cafe he frequents, and she approached him as Catherine asked her to before going to lunch. The two continue their conversation in a coffee shop where Chloe describes to Catherine what they did. Chloe says that they bought sandwiches, then she asked him about his teaching. She says David started talking about his music and just stared at her. That's when David asked if he could kiss her. This immediately upsets Catherine, and she asserts that she didn't ask Chloe to do that, but Chloe is quick to add that David said he couldn't kiss her because he's married. Chloe then says that David asked her if there's somewhere he could kiss her where no one would see them, and as Catherine listens in tears, Chloe says she told David to go to Allen Gardens, a greenhouse. Seeing Catherine's face, Chloe asks her if she wants her to stop, but Catherine tells her to continue. Chloe obliges, mentioning that there was no one in the greenhouse, and after finding the perfect spot, David brought his mouth to her lips. Catherine stops Chloe from talking, saying she was just supposed to meet up with David, see what he did, and report back to her. Confused, Chloe says she doesn't know what Catherine wants, but Catherine tells her that she made a mistake and that she shouldn't have involved her. Catherine then leaves, while Chloe is left even more confused. As Catherine starts to drive, she accidentally bumps into the car in front of her. She apologizes to the driver, and just in time, she sees Chloe leaving on her bicycle. However, Chloe doesn't even reach that far when her bicycle suddenly slips. Catherine helps her and treats her scraped knee, and Chloe apologizes. Chloe returns to her story about David, describing in detail what she did to him. She tells Catherine that she moved her hand inside his pants and that she kept moving it before biting his tongue, making David finish on her hand. Catherine urges her to continue her story, and Chloe says that David had to go to work, so he walked away. After some consideration, Catherine wants Chloe to take some tests to show that she's clean, and Chloe has no problem agreeing to this. As Catherine drives home, she imagines Chloe being intimate with her husband. After a long day, Catherine takes a shower and goes to bed with David, not knowing that he's still awake. The following day, Chloe takes her test results to Catherine's office, and as she waits for Catherine, Michael arrives to pick up his tuxedo. Learning that he's Catherine's son, Chloe introduces herself to Michael and flirts with him. After her appointment with one of her patients, Catherine takes Chloe's results from her, and Chloe reminds her about something that's supposed to happen that day. Later on, Catherine meets her friends, and as they talk, she can't help but think about David. She then receives a text from Chloe, telling her to go to a certain hotel room. In there, Catherine finds the used bed, and in the bathroom, Chloe walks naked. After putting on a robe, Chloe once again describes to Catherine how she and David checked into the hotel. Chloe explicitly tells her how they made love, And while she does, she asks Catherine if her story is turning her on. When Catherine doesn't answer, Chloe continues talking. Catherine starts to get upset, but she sets aside her feelings and gives Chloe her pay. The two of them leave the room together, and as they wait for the elevator, Catherine notices the smell of Chloe's lotion, so Chloe puts some on Catherine's hand. Feeling sad, Catherine tells Chloe how her relationship with David used to be. She starts getting overwhelmed and sits on the couch, and as she cries, Chloe suddenly kisses her. This shocks Catherine, who immediately breaks the kiss and leaves. After watching Michael's piano recital, David kisses Catherine's hand and notices that she's wearing perfume. She corrects him, saying that it's lotion, and when David turns away to talk to someone, Catherine can't help but feel troubled. She abruptly leaves Michael's after party to find Chloe, and they check into a hotel together. In there, Catherine undresses Chloe and asks her to describe how David likes to touch her. Chloe shows her how by kissing her shoulders, and it isn't long before the two women start making love, with Chloe taking the lead and dominating Catherine. Later that night, Catherine shares a cab with Chloe to go home, and once they reach her residence, Catherine forbids Chloe from seeing David again. Before Catherine leaves, Chloe gives her a hairpin, saying it used to be her mother's. Catherine takes it, and as she is about to go, Chloe asks if she wants to see her again. But Catherine could only tell her that she doesn't know. With Catherine being home later than usual, David quickly interrogates her. He demands to know if she's having an affair, if she's in love, and Catherine asks if it makes a difference. David tells her that it does. She asks him if he's in love, and David gets mad for being the new subject of interrogation when Catherine was the one who was gone the whole night and not him. They start arguing, with Catherine calling David discreet with his women, but he retorts that he just appreciates other women's beauty and that it doesn't mean he's fooling around. Now shouting, Catherine brings up how she notices him flirting with every woman he meets, but David insists that he's not having an affair. Their argument is suddenly interrupted by Michael, but as they order him to go back to his room, he angrily tells them how much he can't wait to get out of their house. The following morning, Catherine gets late for work, and when she opens her email, she receives a picture from Chloe that shows the two of them sleeping together. Catherine immediately calls her, and Chloe says she's in her waiting room. Catherine turns around, and sure enough, Chloe is standing there with a bouquet. The two of them sit, and Catherine apologizes to Chloe as she tells her that they need to stop whatever's happening between them. When Chloe says she doesn't want it to be over, Catherine offers her money, but Chloe says it isn't about that. Though Chloe starts crying, Catherine is determined to end things between them, so she asks Chloe to leave. Unbeknownst to Catherine, Chloe visits Michael at his ice hockey practice afterward and flirts with him once more. Later on, Catherine receives a text from Chloe, saying that she already left David. She then calls Chloe and asks to meet her at Café Diplomatico. Without telling her, Catherine also invites David along. At the cafe, David arrives before Chloe, and he demands Catherine to tell him what's going on. Catherine then says that she wants them to be truthful to each other before asking David if there's something he'd like to tell her. Finally, David admits that he didn't actually miss his flight by mistake. He just didn't want to have a birthday party, so he stayed with his students to have a drink with them. When Catherine brings up Miranda, David gets frustrated and accuses his wife of spying on him. Catherine, in turn, accuses him of sleeping with Miranda, but David denies this, saying that he only flirted with her. Of course, Catherine doesn't believe him. Chloe arrives shortly after and approaches their table. David sees her, but he doesn't seem to recognize the woman he supposedly slept with. Chloe starts turning around to leave, and when David asks Catherine who Chloe is, Catherine realizes that she was just making up all those stories about her and David. With this, she tells David that Chloe is a nobody. David goes, but Catherine follows after him to confess what she did. She admits to hiring Chloe to tempt him because she thought that he was having an affair. Catherine also reveals that Chloe lied about sleeping with David, and she believed everything Chloe told her. With her emotions finally spilling from her, she starts telling David about her insecurities before admitting that she slept with Chloe. Although he's surprised by his wife's confession, David doesn't get mad. Instead, he kisses Catherine. Meanwhile, Chloe goes to Catherine's house to hook up with Michael right in his parents' bedroom. When Catherine comes home, she finds Michael and Chloe sleeping in their bed. As soon as Michael wakes up, he panics and asks Chloe to leave with him. Catherine pushes her son out of their room to start arguing with Chloe, telling her to stay away from Michael. Angry, Chloe takes the hairpin she gave Catherine and confesses that she's in love with her. They continue to argue, with Chloe claiming that Catherine wouldn't have gotten David back if it weren't for that she's in love with her. They continue to argue, with Chloe claiming that Catherine wouldn't have gotten David back if it weren't for her. Meanwhile, Michael finds another way to enter his parents' bedroom without Catherine noticing, and when Catherine asks Chloe what she wants, Chloe says she wants Catherine to kiss her. She ends up complying, and as the two kiss, Catherine catches sight of Michael watching. Startled, Catherine suddenly pushes Chloe away from her and towards the bedroom window. Fortunately, Chloe manages to hold onto the frame, but she decides to let go of it. Catherine stays in David's arms as the cops arrive to take Chloe's body and get Michael's statement. Later on, Catherine wears Chloe's hairpin to a party.